some of your elders in your family and ask them questions about where they came from, their lineage, their parents, what life was like, what did it look like. I encourage you because there's a rich history that you'll be missing. It's a rich history of strength that you'll be missing, okay? So I want y'all to listen up to the best way y'all can. I want you guys to really pay attention. And then afterwards, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions. So if you think of one, feel free to try to write it down, put it in make a note in your phone, anything else like that. Any questions before we start? Okay, so I want y'all to be careful. I want y'all to make sure that you're not having side conversations. Don't talk to nobody else while someone is speaking. Make sure y'all maintain respect. We are streaming it, so we can hear your side conversation, and we don't want to. So make sure that everybody listens and be as attentive as possible, okay? Right? Right. Thank you. All right. Elder Julian, it's on you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jesse. I appreciate it. How's everybody doing today? Good. All right, so today we have restoration. How's everybody doing? And also online to our friends at Eastern Gateway Community College. I just want to say welcome to How I Got Over is the title of this. And it's a personal story of the Great Migration. Who knows what the Great Migration is or was? All right. And I don't want you to shout it out. Just raise your hand if you have an idea what the Great Migration is. All right, so some of the kids don't know. The Great Migration, and for those of us who might not have a clear understanding, is a period of time where we had a large number of people moving from the south to the north, specifically the southeast, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, some cases Carolinas and Tennessees, Arkansas. And they were moving, if you go to school, they'll tell you oftentimes it was for opportunity. So we're going to find out a little bit more about those things as we divulge into these stories. And as we talk to my mom, and our mother here at the church, Mother Bertha Walker, about the stories of our family, her family, and how it started off. So let's just start off a little bit. What's your name, Mom? What's your name?
My name is Bertha Ruth Probit Walker.
Bertha Ruth Probit Walker. So let's talk about your maiden name, Probit. What can you tell us a little bit about the Probit family?
Well,
the history of it. Go ahead.
Well, how far back?
So far back as you know.
Well, originally we came out of North Carolina. We did not come from Alabama. Mm-hmm. My great-great-grandparents were slaves in North Carolina. And the way they got from North Carolina to Alabama, the slave owner's daughter got married, and they were given as a wedding gift to the daughter.
Okay. So, for those of you who may not know, North Carolina is a lot of place where you'll find out a lot of African Americans. If you trace back your lineage, you're going to find somebody from North Carolina, because one of the primary points of entry for slave ships was in North Carolina, along the coast. So when you look at History Channel or PBS, and you hear stories about on TV about North Carolina and the slave blocks and the slave ships coming in, that was one of the main ports where slaves would come to America. And oftentimes when they came from the U.S., they weren't coming directly from Africa, but they were coming from some other countries in the Caribbean. What about the Probit family, Mom? And yes, I do call my mother Mommy, and I do call her Mom. So y'all gonna hear me call her Mommy and Mom all through this conversation, because that's how I call her. So, what about the Probit family, Mom? I know you talked about that we came from North Carolina, as far as we know right now. But are there any family stories to talk about anything else?
Yeah, there's a lot of family stories. The main one is how we migrated to Ohio.
Well, the one about how we got to North Carolina. Was there anything about before North Carolina? Maybe about a little island in the southern Antilles?
There was we did come to one of the islands in North Carolina, from North Carolina.
What island was that?
I think I forget.
No problem. There was a story that, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, about us coming from the island of Trinidad. And my great-grandfather's, we don't know if it was his father or his grandfather or who, but some kind of way came through Trinidad Trinidad, North Carolina, and then from North Carolina, your great-grandparents, Charlie and Lillian Mann?
Correct.
Yes, they were sold to Alabama.
Yes.
And at that time, you ever hear about the
But it
children?
was given as a wedding gift to the slave owner's daughter.
Yes.
They were sold as slaves to the slave owner there, but they were given to the slave owner's daughter as a wedding gift. And the slave owner's daughter and her husband moved to Alabama.
Okay. So at that time, Alabama was newly getting settled.
Right.
Who knows about the Trail of Tears? You've heard about the Trail of Tears? What they don't tell us a lot of times, and I'm a history buff, so I know a lot about history, and we can put pieces together. But what they don't tell you is the reason why the Trail of Tears even happened is because of a little invention called the cotton gin. The cotton gin made it so that cotton didn't just grow on the coast and in the Carolinas and in those subtropical climates, but they could actually use a different type of cotton. I can't remember if it's long seed, short seed, I can't remember what it's called. But a different type of cotton that was grown in the South. So because of the South now being able to support cotton growth, because, that they could use to sell cotton, the cotton gin, they needed some farmland. When I say they, I mean the American government. Needed some farmland. So they abandoned a tree they had with the natives who lived in that area. And the Trail of Tears happened. And when they evicted them from their land and moved them to the reservations out west, they had this farmland they needed to inhabit. And so forth, these planters began to move into the South. They were white planters. Began to move to the South, and they needed hands. They needed slaves in order to work this land. And this is how the Provis family ended up in Alabama during this time period. We've actually been in the United States for a while. And let me back up for a minute. Let me say this. I know that most African American families don't know their history. And you find out the reason why, and from my studies and from talking to people, a lot of us don't know our histories like that. Who talks about something bad that happened to them? Nobody. It's called trauma. You don't want to relive your trauma. You don't want to retell your trauma. And this period of American history for our people, for blacks who are from Africa, is traumatizing. To live in this state and to be considered less than human is traumatizing. So our family is a little bit weird. We tell stories. We tell all types of stories.
Yeah.
Pastor told me earlier today, doing the sermon, how we grew up hearing stories. And it was funny, my wife, we've been married almost 20 years, but she said she was waiting to meet all these people she was hearing all these stories about, and come to find out they had been long gone. They had went on to be with the Lord because we just tell stories. So we're in Alabama, and specifically we're in Crenshaw County, Alabama, which is about an hour or so now south of Montgomery. Correct?
Yeah, maybe an hour. Maybe not even an hour.
And that's where the Provis family ended up after slavery.
Yeah, in a place called Pelican or Grallerton, Alabama. You know.
Pelican, Rattleton,
Yeah.
I've heard they're all in Crenshaw County.
Yeah, all of this is Crenshaw County.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they all, I've been down there, you all, they all like crossroads. Like, it ain't even a good street light in some of these places. The roads are still red dirt. But let's go back, let's fast forward a little bit.
Okay.
Let's fast forward to your
But wait a minute.
Okay.
First of all, let me tell you, my dad, their grandfather, was the first generation born free. I'm only the second generation. My siblings and me from slavery.
Wow.
So that's what I was going to talk about. Actually, my grandfather, who we all call Paul, and everybody who knew him back in the day called him Paul. Yanni's chuckling because she heard the name Paul, even though she ain't never met Paul. Paul passed away about 30, 40 years before she was born. But Paul was born the first generation from slavery. He was the youngest of how many children? Roughly.
12, 13.
I think it was 16. I think we counted up, it was 16. Because here's what happened. Grandpa Enoch, Paul's dad, he had been married. And he had a number of children. Well, Grandma Molly, she was married to Mr. Phillips, and they had a number of children.
Mr. Phillips.
Yeah, Mr. Phillips passed away. And so did Grandpa Enoch's first wife. Well, Grandpa Enoch and Grandma Molly got married, and they had some more children.
We have his, hers, and theirs.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we're related to everybody. So the Phillips and a Provence, you know. So, you know, if they are a Provence, I'm related to them.
Wow.
If they are Phillips, from my grandma Molly's side, I'm related to them as well.
So my grandfather, Henry Asbury, or Paul, Henry Asbury Probert was born roughly, I'm going to mention why we say roughly, 1897,
Correct.
we believe, maybe, depending on whose story you
Well, they didn't keep real good birth records of black folks back in the day. Because there was most people back then were born at home, and they were born, you know, a midwife took care of them, and so they don't have real good birth records. It could be and it could not be.
My daughter and I were watching a show one time, kind of placed back in that era, and it was talking about catching babies.
Right.
And they would say you would catch a baby. That was a midwife who was actually giving birth.
My grandmother was a midwife. My father's mother.
So your father's mother,
Grandma Molly,
Molly.
Mary Jane Allen, she was a midwife.
Okay. And Mary Jane Allen was a married man. Maiden name.
Was her maiden name.
Yes. And she was actually, she was born a slave.
Exactly. She was born a slave, and so was my grandfather. You know, Provence and Mary Jane Allen, both of them were slaves.
Okay. And so going back to my grandfather, Henry Asbury, born around 1897.
Correct.
One of the youngest of these 16 children, but he was born free. First generation born free. Tell us a little bit about your father, what you remember about him. Some things that stand out. What did he do for a living?
He was a farmer. He was a sharecropper. He didn't own any land or anything like that. He was a sharecropper. And sharecropping is when you the person who you working with or for, it's their land, and you raise a crop on it. He raised cotton, peanuts, and corn, and the owner of that property get a portion of that. Now, when we left Alabama, I was only 8, so I can't tell you he got a third of it, or a fourth of it, or a tenth of it. But I know he got a portion of it because of that. That he never went into the money part of it. But that's how he. But he was. I can tell you, he was a good farmer. He was an excellent farmer.
Now, how do you know that?
Because when we got ready to leave there, the person who he was farming with was very upset because my dad made him a lot of money.
We ain't gonna call no names. That man might have some descendants now. We don't want to upset anybody.
No, because no, he did. He made him a lot. And my dad actually, he raised everything we ate as far as vegetables and stuff like that. The only thing he bought very little from the store.
Okay.
You know.
So wait, you said the guy didn't want him to leave when he left.
Right.
So I know that your father had a reputation, and it's okay to say the word this time because we tell it in the context of history,
No.
and it brings to light the era that we were living in.
Okay, you have to understand that farmers in the South, they help each other. And so, like, say if your crop was ready to be harvested, and I wasn't doing anything, I would help you. Well, my father had a situation where this was what was going on with him. And so he went to help this man in his field, and because the man's wife did not go to the field the day before and work the fields, the owner of the farm,
The man he was sharecropping with.
yeah, the man he was sharecropping with, he whipped the man's wife.
Now this is after slavery.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh.
And my dad did not like it. And so my dad asked the man, do you need me to help you? And the man told him no, and he called my dad's name and told him no, said because she didn't go, and he let it go. So my dad didn't like it. So the next day, him and his kids, when they went home that day, they didn't go back. And so because they didn't go back, the man wanted to know how come him and his kids didn't come back, and his family didn't come back and help. And so I guess the man must have told the man what my dad said, because they called him the uppity N-word, and after that, their goal was to teach him a lesson.
So, and I'm going to say the word. So Paul then was known as an uppity nigga.
Yeah.
Because he was upset because the white man
With the black man's wife.
With the black man's wife, and what you have to understand is a lot of us say, well, if I was there, I would do this. You don't know what you would do if you were there. Okay. Because this was a society. A lot of us, I don't know if any of you remember the movie Life, but we made light of that movie. Ray seen it. We made light of that movie because it's funny. But at that point in time in America, simply being black in the South, you could be arrested. And the point of being arrested was then to have you not just incarcerated, but what's called convict leasing. You know, now when I was young, we always think, oh, when you're a convict, when you're in prison, you're making license plates. Well, that comes from the idea that was very widely used in the South, because the 13th Amendment got rid of slavery, except in the courts of punishment for crime. So what they did, they made up black codes. They made up segregationist laws. You couldn't, if you were a man, you couldn't be seen being a vagrant, in other words, loitering during the day without going to work. You couldn't walk on the railroad tracks. The people would walk on the railroad tracks to avoid trucks full of white folks trying to beat them and lynch them. You couldn't be certain places at certain times. You couldn't have so many people gathered at a certain time of day. And if you broke those laws, they would take you to jail, and they would lease you out to a company. I remember in reading about a company in chain gangs where they would work and build roads. They would work in the steel mills in Birmingham. But the convicts didn't make money. The counties got the money.
Yes.
The company owners got the money. And oftentimes, it was considered at times, if you watch any documentaries about it, to be worse than slavery, because they didn't have a vested interest in slaves. They didn't have to pay for the labor. They just got it free from the government. They would work us to death.
Mm-hmm.
In searching Ancestry.com, searching some family history, even on my wife's side of the family, found out that my father-in-law's father had been a subject to convict leasing right in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And what was his crime for being placed in prison? Not jail. In prison, vagrancy.
Yes.
In other words, walking around in the middle of the day without being at work. So when they tell you that you are lazy, that's a lie. Because we couldn't be lazy.
No, because if you stop and think about it, if you stop and think about the foundation of this country, the United States of America, it's really built on the backs of blood, sweat, and tears of black folks. You know, because slaves really built this country from the ground up. Yes. Our blood, sweat, and tears, our ancestors' blood, sweat, and tears are in the soil of this country. They came here from Europe, and they basically stole this country from the Indians, and they, put them on reservations and committed genocide and all of that. They brought us in as free labor because we were paid nothing. We were put in huts with dirt floors, wasn't allowed to learn to read or write. Like kids go to school now and they take it for granted, but you should learn everything you can because you cheat yourself when you don't. Because what you get up here belongs to you and nobody can take it from you.
Yes.
Because we were not allowed to go to school to learn. You were not, and it was really a crime for you to go to school. And you could go to jail or you could be punished for learning to read or write, So when you think about not going to school, and I hate school, you're cheating yourself because your ancestors, some of them died for that very reason. And the way some of us learn how to read, because they used to teach in a home. And so if you worked in the house, you would pay attention to them teaching their kids. And while they were teaching their kids, you learned too, but you couldn't let them know you was learning.
So oftentimes, because even actually, it's kind of interesting you say that because typically, while they would have a butler or sometimes a man, most of the people who worked in the home were the women.
Right.
And they were maids.
And you had to be of a certain complexion.
You did have to, yes. You had to pass the bag test.
Right.
That's what we say nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
But when the maids or the women worked in the home, they had the opportunity to learn more. It's kind of interesting that actually goes into today where, even at the college I work at, Eastern Gateway, who we're live streaming for, 2/3 of our African American population are female. We've kind of got into that notion that the women are the ones who're supposed to learn, and we feel that men sometimes aren't supposed to. That's not true. But let's go back a little bit to Paul. So now he's known as an uppity N-word, and first generation from slavery, living in Alabama still.
Right.
How did this affect him in his life? Was he a target?
Yeah. He had to be careful wherever he went, whatever he did, and always be aware of his surroundings.
So just to give you an idea about my grandfather, what did he always carry with him?
My dad carried a pocket knife with him at all times.
Okay.
He was never without it, right up until his very death.
So those of you know, Pastor carried a pocket knife too. That's why his grandfather carried a pocket knife. I'm putting his business out.
And the reason he carried a pocket knife because a knife don't make a noise. And there were several occasions where he had to hide for, to save his life.
So let's go to you are the youngest of 11 children.
Yes.
One of your brothers, just older than you, David.
Yes.
Was sick.
Right.
And you all lived outside of town.
Right. We lived in the country, in the farmland.
And he had to go to town to get some medicine.
I went to town to get medicine for him. And on the way back from town, he had to hide under a bridge because some white men was looking for him because they wanted to kill him. And he hid under the bridge until, and that's a blessing all by itself, because when the pastor was talking today about the goodness of God, God really has watched over and did watch over and still is.
Amen.
Because in Alabama, in most of the southern states, you got rattlesnakes, and they're not, it's not just a rattlesnake. There are different kinds of rattlesnakes. There are cottonmouth moccasins, water moccasins, in which he was under the bridge, and it's where the water moccasins live, and they're just as poisonous as the copper, the diamond head, and all of them are poisonous. So for him to hide under a bridge and not end up dead was a blessing all by itself.
The last time we went to Alabama, we were riding in the bus, and we was getting ready to go to Cousin Inez's house. Not Cousin Inez, Cousin Azor's house.
Right.
And the bus stopped, and we looked, and there was some big old cat that ran across the road, and there wasn't no cat.
No, it was a bobcat, like a bobcat.
Yeah, just walking, running around. Yeah, and this is where it was safer to be on the railroad tracks out in that than on the street.
Yes.
Think about that. So, tell us about fairs.
Well, that's where it all culminated at a fair, because I don't know who all was there, but I know him and my mother was there, and my one brother was there with my dad, and there was some other family members there, I understand, but who they were, I don't know. But anyway, these men attacked my dad, and my dad and my brother.
So just to be clear, some white men
Right.
attacked your dad because he had a reputation,
Right.
and they wanted to put him in his place.
Right.
He was with one of his sons who he had trained in the use of a pocket knife, like himself.
Yeah.
And what happened there?
Well, they fought back.
They fought back. And in the midst of them fighting back, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the white men got cut.
Right. More than one of them got cut.
And they knew that they was cut by Uncle Harry.
Yes.
Okay.
They knew they was cut by my brother, but they couldn't find my brother because he left and went to New York, and he never ever went back to Alabama. Never ever.
So because of what happened at
That
fair,
Mm-hmm.
Uncle Harry left and went to New York. They sent him to New York. They sent him north.
Mm-hmm.
So just so y'all know, I was about 15, 16 before I got to go to the fair the first time in my life. That's how I knew this story so well back in the 1940 something or 50 something, because I knew that this is why I could not go to a fair.
Well, it wasn't that he couldn't go. We just never went because a fair never had
same.
a good experience for us.
Right.
And we did go periodically, but it's not like, oh, the fair's in town, we gotta go to the fair.
So if you ever look back at your family history, you wonder why y'all don't do stuff, or why y'all do stuff.
Yeah.
Some of your parents don't even know. I bet you any money it's something that happened along the family line.
Yeah.
But so Uncle Harry goes north.
Mm-hmm.
And what did they do to try to get Uncle Harry back?
But they put my dad in prison.
So they put your father in prison.
Right, because they couldn't get my brother. So he went to prison.
So did they charge him with anything?
I don't know what they charged him with because, to tell you the truth, and people don't believe it, but he used to come home on weekends sometimes. But he wasn't in, my mom and I used to go to Montgomery. He was in prison in Montgomery, a place called Fort Spot. And my mom and I would go to visit him. And when we would go to visit him in prison, he would show us all over the prison. And we met the people who worked in the prison. I mean, it sounds strange because if you go to prison now, you don't do that. But and I can remember as a kid, and they would give me, the people who worked in office and stuff, they'd give me money. And because they thought I was a cute little girl. I had to be like about 4 or 5 years old.
Okay.
You know.
So this is about 1950.
Don't tell her.
No, my mother don't care. My mother tell you her age right now.
Oh, I'm 79. I'll be 80 in August.
All right.
So this is about 1947, 1948. And you were getting money from the office workers. What would you do with this money?
You know what? I don't know what I did with this money because it's kind of funny because when my mom came to live with me after a while there, and so we were sitting there talking. I said, Mommy, remember when Daddy was in prison and we used to go to the prison and people would give me money. I said, whatever happened to the money? And she said, you would give it to your dad and said, buy you some medicine.
So what? Now I know you don't remember
Mm-hmm.
why you actually gave it to him, but why do you think you would have gave him that money and said buy you some medicine?
Because he used to hemorrhage up blood.
So 1947-ish. Your father's sick. He's in prison. He's about maybe 50 years old. Why was he hemorrhaging blood?
Well, at some point, a doctor operated on him and left a plastic tube inside him, and it enlarged in his lungs. And he used to hemorrhage up blood, and he used to take cod liver oil, all the time. He'd take it every day, cod liver oil. Remember him when he was,
He said,
you know, yeah. And I take it to this very day because of him, because I was a kid and I was a daddy's girl, and when he would take it, I would take it.
Yeah.
Okay, and it tasted awful.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna add a little bit of context to that surgery.
Right.
So it was a local anesthetic. He wasn't actually asleep during the surgery. He was awake. But he couldn't. It was numbing, so he wasn't feeling the pain of it. But it was a white doctor.
Right.
Because normally, if you had a black doctor, they weren't allowed to go in the hospitals anyway and do surgeries. And
Probably was done in his office anyway.
probably might have been, because they might not let a black man in the hospital.
Right.
And since he was under a local anesthetic, the story goes he saw them leave the tube or drop the tube as they were closing him up, and he told the doctor that he saw it.
Right.
And what was the doctor's response? They want me to say.
You can tell.
They said, "Shut up, nigga."
Yeah.
So imagine being under surgery and that happened. That's why a lot of our people to this day, to our detriment, don't want to go to doctors.
Yes.
Because we have bad experiences in the past with white doctors. It wasn't until when he came up.
1955. We had moved to Ohio. We moved to Ohio in 1952, January. I was 8 years old. In 1955, he had the surgery to remove the tube from his lungs.
For almost 8 years.
Yeah.
We actually have the tube at my parents' house.
Right.
Well, it's at Pastor's house?
No, it's at my house.
Okay.
It's at my house.
So my mother's house.
Yeah, when they, at that time, they probably wouldn't do it today, but back then, when they operated on him, they literally cut him from here all the way around to the middle of his back. And, they took the tube, removed the tube, and they put it in another, tube, and, they gave it to my mom. And, the fact that he had the surgery and came through the surgery was a miracle all by itself.
Yeah.
Because they didn't think,
Thank God.
But so you got sick, falsely accused, not like Jesus. Black man in prison. and you were bringing him money for medicine.
I wasn't bringing it, really. Actually, the Lord provided for him. Because I didn't have no money. I didn't have a job. And this money was given to me. And I remember the money being given to me.
Just didn't know what happened.
I just didn't know what happened to it. I never even thought about it, to tell you the truth. You know how like kids say, what'd you do with my money? I don't ever, and I just happened to be sitting there talking to my mother one day. We was talking about stuff. Because in our family, you never die. You're not here. But we talk about you all the time. Because like she say, my son-in-law said the same thing that his wife said. Where are these people? I said, oh, they're dead. and he told his family, he said, they talk about people like they're still living. Because we carry you with us in our hearts all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all thought it was just on Wakanda.
No, we do. And there's probably stories about all of my siblings that I know.
There's so many more stories you can tell.
Yeah.
But so, who got involved? With what happened? How did he get out of prison?
Well, the NAACP got involved, and my mother had I know what happened, but I don't know all the details of what happened. But I know the NAACP got involved, and because they was trying to extradite my brother back to Alabama, but she had to go to New York and for some kind of hearing of the court case and stuff up there. But they want to know how you're going to put him in jail for somebody you already got. Why you want to extradite him to Alabama for put him in jail for something you already got somebody down there in jail for. So they couldn't extradite him back to Alabama. And at that time, my brother Henry was the oldest one of us at home, and he was in charge. My dad was in prison, and he ran the family.
So Mo, that's what we have Mo and Paul. They call him Grandma, Grandpa, Mo and Paul. And so Mo was up north, Bertha. Her name is Bertha as well, Bertha Mack. And she was up north in New York.
Right.
Or New York.
New York.
No, New Jersey.
New Jersey.
New Jersey. She was in New Jersey, not New York.
Yeah, New Jersey.
And making sure that.
Well, she was meeting with officials there with the NAACP.
And what did they want her to do?
Well, they really wanted her to leave him in prison for another year, and they were going to sue the state of Alabama for every day he was in prison for being wrongly in prison. But he told her, no, don't do that, said, because if they find out you doing that, he felt like they would kill him. So he told him, if you just get me out, then I'll take, he would handle it. And so when he got out, I think might have stayed in Alabama a couple of years. And in January of '52.
Wait. Don't rush him.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He got out.
Right.
And he said stay in Alabama for a couple of years. January '52, what happened?
We moved to Ohio.
Back up a little bit. Didn't he go to Ohio first?
Well, yeah, he came here first.
Him
and my oldest brother Oliver.
Okay.
They came here first.
Now if they watching Uncle Oliver, got a bunch of great grands and grandkids out there. Yeah, we talking about y'all grand. Ain't no Louise husband. Y'all's great grandfather.
Yeah. My oldest brother, him and my oldest brother, and my brother Willie James, they all came here.
Okay, Shake. We
Right.
saw Uncle Willie Shake.
Yeah. But I always did call him Willie James. I never called him Shake, although Shake was his nickname. But I always called him by his name. But my dad and my brother Oliver and my brother Willie James, they came here, and actually they went to Youngstown before they came to Warren. I don't know how they ended up in Warren or what made them come to Warren, because they went to Youngstown first, and they was working in Youngstown Sheeting too.
I thought they were working in Youngstown Sheeting too. And he was up north, and that left the next oldest son, Uncle Harry.
He was in New Jersey.
He was in Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
So the next oldest son, Uncle Henry,
Right.
was down south helping take care of her.
Yeah, he would be the one in charge. He was always the one in charge.
So
Even if Oliver was there, he was the one in charge.
so how did y'all end up from Alabama? The rest of y'all.
How did we get? You mean?
So did he just come down and pick y'all up and say,
Oh, no,
"Okay,
no,
we
no,
see
no.
you at a party, everybody gone"?
No, he told my mother to sell off everything that she could sell off and pack up and we moved north.
So what did the sharecropper say?
Well, he came out here when she was in the process of getting rid of the animals and stuff, and he told her that if you don't go, Henry will come back. And my mother told him, I have to do what my husband said, do what Henry said do, and she kept moving.
So did she just move and he?
But well, she kept moving, and so we went, and this never made sense to me, but this is what we did. When we left Alabama, we left from where we were down in Lucerne, where I come from, where I was born. We went to my uncle's house up in Helican, and we stayed there for a week.
Now did y'all when y'all left Lucerne, that house?
Mm-hmm.
Was it during the daytime?
I can't really remember that.
Because I will say I lived with my grandmother for quite a while, and my grandmother she was born in 1900, and she would oftentimes say, "Turn off that TV, it's been playing all day," and she'll start singing or telling some stories too. And I often had cousins and uncles and aunts coming over, and everybody was reliving history. So I'm not sure if I got stories from you or from Uncle Henry and Mom.
But my brother knew more.
Yeah, yes, definitely, because he's older.
Right.
He was 13 years older than you?
Yeah, 12 or 13.
And but if I remember correctly, I was always under the impression that y'all left during the night from Lucerne to go to.
It might have been dusk. Not like
Not
it wasn't
like
like
night.
it wasn't like in the middle of the day. But in the South, most black folks don't travel when it's dark, pitch black, especially because when white folks down there would find out if a bunch of black folks was out at night, and especially if you didn't have any kind of protection or anything like that, they would try to hurt you.
Okay.
So
Maybe it wasn't like maybe I just got that perception because I knew y'all were sneaking out.
yeah.
Okay. So y'all went.
But they didn't know when we were leaving, but they knew we were leaving, but they didn't know when.
Okay. So y'all left and went to one relative's house, stayed a little bit,
Stayed a week.
and then you went to another relative's house.
Went to my grandparents in Montgomery, and we stayed a week there with my mother's mom and dad, and then after a week we got in the car and
Who was all in the car?
oh my God. My brother Henry, Willie James, and TL, and David and Bud. No, Willie James wasn't there. No, it was my brother Henry, TL, David and Bud, myself, and my mother, and a cousin, Ezekiel Probit. 7 of us. It was in a 5-passenger car.
So where did you sit?
On the floor. Back in the day, they had that little hump.
Yeah.
And that's what I sat on.
1952, January.
Mm-hmm.
1952, you ran from Alabama to Ohio. Let me ask you this. Do you remember ever stopping along the way after you left Montgomery?
They only stopped to get gas and go to the bathroom because, and you had to pick your place to stop because some places would have signs, no colored allowed. So if they had signs like that, you couldn't go there. And,
Did y'all have any food with you?
whenever back then, you always, no matter when you went or you came, you always packed a lunch. Because you could not pull into a restaurant now in fast food, you could not do that, because they had signs, no colors, or whites only. And as a matter of fact, my mother's mother passed away in 1967. This is 1967, mind you.
Pastor was 1 year old. To give you an idea how long it is.
And we went to her funeral in Alabama, and on the way there, we stopped at a restaurant, and we thought they could go in. It was a gas station and a restaurant, but you could get gas, but if you wanted food from the restaurant, they had a drive-through window where you could pull up to the window and you couldn't go in. You wasn't allowed in. You know.
So, because you were black,
Right.
you had to go through the drive-thru.
Right.
The white folks go through the drive-thru?
No, they went in. Actually, you didn't go to the drive-thru. You walked up to it and ordered your food.
Oh, so it's like a side window.
Yeah.
Did any of your siblings have any issues with drive-thrus because of that? So, my Uncle Henry.
My oldest brother Henry, and he would not go to a drive-thru.
To the day he died, he just passed away.
Because,
last year.
You know, you can go to the bank and go through the drive-thru. And so sometimes her mom and I would go to the bank. And I said, let's go through the drive-thru. She said, no, Henry told me. So Henry said, don't go through the drive-thru. So we couldn't go. She wouldn't let me go through the drive-thru. Did you know that?
So because of the fact, and I'm just letting y'all know, things affect us. And that's neither good nor bad. It's just, some people got things they like. But it helps you understand where people come from and why they come from.
Well, and also, the other part of that, I think it's good for us to know who we are, our history, because it tells you who you are, you know, where you came from and what you had to tolerate to get to where you are. Because a lot of our children today think that everything has always been the way it is today. Well, if you stop and think about it, it's not so good today because you can still get killed driving while black, okay? And so, you know, you need to be more aware of and be alert to things around you. You know, you don't take things for granted.
That's a good point.
But we can't hate people either at the same time. Because after everything that happened with my father, when I was a kid, I thought all white people was evil, and I thought they were demons. But as I got older, what I realized is, had there not been some decent people along the way, we would not be here today.
Amen. Amen.
You know, so God uses everybody.
Amen.
You know, He's no respecter of color. So you can't look at somebody and say because they're this color, that color, they're bad. But what you have to judge each person of their, you know, for their own individual character. But you have to be able to discern that. And the way we discern that is God's grace and mercy. You know.
That's good. That's good. I know we're getting towards the end of time here. Did anybody have any questions that's here right now for us? Go ahead.
How long was he in prison?
He was in prison less than a year.
Okay.
So this whole process was less than a
Yes.
How old is the pastor now?
The pastor now?
year. Ooh. Let me see. I am. He is 56.
55 or 56.
56. He's 56. So this was about 55 years ago. They were still driving and had to. Well, you ever heard the Mason-Dixon line? So in Ohio, the Mason-Dixon line is the Ohio River. In other words, it's the border between the North and the South states, what used to be the North and the Southern states. And once you hit that Mason-Dixon, you might see some colored-only signs. And you had to watch where you could go. That's it.
Well, you know, okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. You say something.
I was going to say, like now when you go, anywhere you go in this country, you stay at a motel, a hotel, whichever. But guess what? Back then, when we went home south, you had to have a family member you could stay with because you weren't allowed to stay in their hotels and stuff.
Y'all ever notice whenever y'all go on a visit, y'all always stay at some cousin's house or somebody's house? That's why. Because there was a time we couldn't use hotels. You know? We just kept on doing it. Josiah, you have a question?
How much places? Wait, I forgot.
It's okay. If you remember, just ask here. I'm sorry. But yeah, anyone else? Anyone else have any questions about anything? I saw.
It's a strange question, but do you remember using like a green book to like know where you had to go?
No, I never had to use a green book because I was on a farm. And we never had to use a green book because usually a green book, well, people mostly who was in the city and stuff like that, but we was in the country on the farm. And
Oh, so you knew the Green Book was?
I've heard of it.
Okay.
But, you know, we didn't have one.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful town. Beautiful town. Grandma, Lula
Yeah,
and Grandpa,
William Jackson.
yeah, they lived in the city in Montgomery. They was highfalutin.
No, well, they had got older and they moved from the country to the city. That's what they did, because they didn't farm anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, because he used to farm. They lived in Pike County.
Yeah, in Troy.
Yeah. No, but that's over in but Pike County is in Troy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. You had a question now? Okay.
I have a question, but I was raised up with this as a little kid too, outhouses.
Oh, everybody down there had an outhouse, and you better make sure there was no snakes in there when you went in there.
Because did y'all have running water in that house? In your house grew up?
Yeah, he went to the well and drew it.
So you ain't had no spigot.
No.
Tell us about, matter of fact, before we go, tell us about the house you grew up in.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Josiah. You got your question.
Was there any house that black people could buy?
Yeah, there were, black people did own land, and they did own property. After slavery, they was allowed to buy land, and they did own land and property, houses and stuff.
If I remember correctly, I believe my Uncle Henry's wife, her family had land.
Yes.
They owned some land. As well, on my father's side, in 1980.
190.
119, oh, that's a whole lot.
Yes.
And on my father's side, I actually found a record, I think it was during President James Monroe's time. So it was like right when they were dividing up Alabama, some type of way he got some land. I don't know how, and I don't know what happened to it.
Well, he come from Virginia.
Well, they got land in Alabama.
Miss Walker and them came from, the Binions came from Alabama.
Okay, well, we ain't gonna go on that side of the train right now. We talk about that later. But they, some type of way they, yes, I mean, yeah. On my father's side,
Yeah, that would be your dad's side.
yeah, they got some land somewhere. Go ahead, Ryan.
Were you able to attend school?
We did, but they were segregated schools. I went to an all-black school. I only went to school for Alabama for a minute. And the other part of that, in Alabama, back in the day, back when we moved here, like since we lived on a farm, when harvest time came, they would pull black kids out of school and you gather the crops. That's why you see a lot of black folks that didn't have a high school diploma or an education. That's because they had to work the field. Yes.
I know when Paul got sick, people dropped out of school and stayed back to home. Yeah, you were in the
Well, thanks for asking that. Because that upset him a lot, that he was not able to get a high school diploma, get an education. And the reason he didn't get an education was because we lived in the South. And I would venture to say, without a doubt, had we not moved to Ohio when we did, my brother David and my brother SW and myself would have never gotten a high school education. I think that's the only reason the three of us, out of all 11 of us, we're the only three that had a high school education, and I think that's the reason for it. Because once we moved here, they had no choice but to send us to school. But that did upset people a lot, that he did not get an education. And that's not right, but that's what they did. And it wasn't just him. They did that to a lot of black folks.
So for those of you that don't know, Peepaw is my mother's older brother Henry. and actually SW, you heard her say the name SW, yes, that is her brother's name. She had two brothers whose names were letters. But hey, my grandfather had never been to school, was illiterate, and my grandmother was a third grade or fifth grade education?
About a third grade education, probably. Huh?
Yeah, she thought she knew something.
She could read.
Yeah, she can read, but she thought, yeah, she can.
So
yeah.
So you went from one generation, the first generation born free, my grandfather, our grandfather, your father, to the next generation. Some of you all had a high school diploma. Three of you.
David and SW and myself.
Okay. To the next generation, the first generation to get a college degree, I believe it was President Wilson's. My cousin. The first one was Leanna Spencer. Right here, my first cousin Leanna, she was the first. So my generation was the first even to be able to enter college in our family.
Well, Catherine had one too. But
Catherine,
Catherine would be my age.
A number of us got it now, but I don't know who got it first. Maybe you or Catherine.
But no, Catherine did because she's way older than me.
Okay,
She's way older.
Okay.
Yeah, she's way older.
Sorry, Leanna, you say. But
Paul came to my graduation.
Did he?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was struggling walking, but he came to Kent State to see me graduate.
That probably warmed his heart.
Yeah.
Any other questions for anybody?
I had two questions. So that means that y'all's generation was the first to go to desegregated schools then, right? Like your kids' generation was the first to go to desegregated
My brother
schools?
was in
Well, not your kids, but like your brother's kids and stuff?
No, my brother, myself.
Went to
my brother David, and
desegregated schools?
SW. We went to Warren City schools.
But they were segregated though?
No, they was integrated.
It was integrated? Okay.
Well, we went to First Street.
Okay.
We went to First Street, we went to Turner, and we went to Harding.
Okay.
Harding was the only high school as it is now. And so when we got here, there was white kids and black kids going to school together.
Okay.
In the South, the school that I went to, it was 100% black. Black teachers
So when
and
in
everything.
the South it was segregated, but when you moved here you were integrated.
I actually got a chance to see the school you went to. It became the elementary school.
They called it, back then it was called Crenshaw County Training School.
Yeah, but now that they consolidated because they couldn't have segregated schools after Brown v. Ford, that became the elementary and the white school became the high school in that town. Go ahead, Isaiah.
Wait, so does any of your family members own land today or not?
She own land. I own land.
Oh, you mean in the South?
Yeah.
No, well, you know what? It's yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, on my father's side, my dad's side, his siblings stayed in the South. He's the only one that left Alabama. So both of his siblings, two of his brothers that was still living when I came along, they own land. And someone called me and wanted to know, well, I guess there's some private land down there, which I didn't know anything about.
I know there's a private road we found.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
But there's land too, and they wanted us all to go together and pay for it, and pay the taxes on it. And I'm like, I ain't never heard of this land before. So that wasn't something I wanted to do.
So
we
we stopped there for a minute, but we need to go back. We talked about the house. You know, it had an outhouse.
Yeah.
The running water was outside, and the pump you had to prime.
No, you didn't pump no prime. It was a well.
It was a well. I'm sorry.
No, okay. Any of you guys watch Little House on the Prairie? The well they had in the middle of the yard with the little top over it.
It was outside.
And it was a top over it so that stuff couldn't fall down into the well. And there was like a say this is the well and there's a top over it. There's a bar that goes across here, and there's a rope with a pulley on it. It sort of comes across a pulley, and you would drop the bucket into the well. The bucket would fill up with water. You pull it up by hand, and that's how you got your water.
Just like in medieval times.
Yeah.
But
that's not how they do it now.
But you didn't have water in the house.
No.
Now, how many of y'all lived in this house?
When we was in the South.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, when we was in the South, it was just my mom and dad and us 6 kids. But my brother and his family used to come and stay for a couple of months at a time. I don't know why, but they would.
So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
It'd be about 10 of us in there.
And so it's a big house here.
Oh no, there was no big houses. You know how you had? There was a kitchen, and how I don't know if you remember this.
So the kitchen had a stove in it.
Right, and there's a table in there, and then there was they call a front room, a side room, and a back room. So basically, there's 4 rooms in this house, but there was like 2 beds in every room. And the front room is where the fireplace was because there was no central heating, you know.
So you come up from a time where you ain't even have central heating.
Correct.
But you had wood floors, though. The house was.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That was an upgrade. And an outhouse.
Yes.
And a well out front.
Right.
So now you got Alexa and a robot vacuum. Look at God.
Well, God has been very good, and he still is.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, we done told enough.
There's a million and one stories that we could tell about so much, but we do thank my mother for this opportunity. We thank all of you for being a part, but also I want you to remember, while this is our story, while this is the Provis story, I bet you any money your families have some stories that are very similar. We are not unique.
No, we're not.
We're not unique to being unjustly incarcerated.
No.
We're not unique to being murdered. Yes, we didn't get in all the stories. We're not unique to being targeted for being black. We're not unique to struggling and making our way through to get education, to get college, to own land, to make a name for ourselves and a future for our families. But that just gives you a glimpse of what has been done in the past, because you cannot know where you're going unless you know where you came from. Let no one shame you about your history. Let no one shame you about your past. And even about American history in general, because this is American history. Black history is American history. From the time in 1619, when the first Africans landed on the shores of this nation, until today, we have been integral in the building, maintaining, and sustaining of this country. And it would not be who it was if we weren't who we are. So thank you all for your time. We appreciate you. Thank you all online. Jesse, you can go ahead and end it.